During this campaign, two surrogates have stood out from the rest. On Kamala Harris's side, Mark Cuban, an incredible business leader, has been out there making the case for the vice president, her economic message, and Donald Trump's disastrous tariff plan that would wreck our economy. And on Donald Trump's side, we have seen MAGA stooge Scott Jennings, who always appears on CNN and always makes my blood boil, pushing disingenuous and dishonest talking points on behalf of Donald Trump. But today, on CNN, those two surrogates collided in what was an incredible debate for Mark Cuban and a disastrous performance for Scott Jennings. And we are going to get into all of that. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really means the world to me. Now let's get into this debate between Cuban and Jennings.
Question. Mark, I'll start with you. If Donald Trump wins this race, what do you think is the one thing that worked in his favor for why he won?
He's a relentless salesperson that doesn't care about the facts. He's that sales guy on the car lot that'll tell you that the 1992 Corolla is a Rolls Royce. And if you say it enough time, people will start to believe it.
Scott, I know you don't like to say a lot of nice things about Harris, but if she wins, what do you think is the one reason that you would attribute that to if you had to guess right now?
Oh, if I had to guess, it would probably be mobilization of women voters around the issue of abortion. I mean, if you look at all the polling, it's the one issue that works for her. She's got a wide lead on it.
That's what she's talking about tonight in Texas.
That's what she's talking about tonight. It seemed to mobilize Democrats in the midterms, although it's a different electorate this time. But if that is the result, it will likely be attributable to that.
I mean, when you look at this race and you're watching this as a huge surrogate for hers, you know, you've been out there. And what's interesting about you is you kind of take the arguments against Harris. Some of the ones we've heard from Scott, you know, on the economy and whatnot, she has cut Trump's lead on the economy by a significant amount from where it was when it was Biden and Trump in this race. Is it enough, though? I think is going to be the major question when you look at how voters are seeing this.
Well, she just has to reduce it on the margins. She's better for business. There's 33 million companies in this country. 99% of them are small business. 99% of those are pass-through. And 99% of the CEOs and entrepreneurs that run them make $400,000 or less. So effectively, for every company in this country, your taxes are going to be the same or lower. We just have to get that word out. And I think that's why she's closing the delta.
Yeah, I disagree. I think the reason Trump is winning and will win ultimately on the issue of the economy is the comparative. I mean, look at the polling. His job approval retrospectively is far higher than the Biden-Harris job approval today. There's one reason for that, because people feel economic anxiety today that they did not feel under Donald Trump. They didn't feel the inflation under Trump. And they don't really believe that Biden and Harris either have a handle on it at best or they've made it worse. And I think it's a change election. And honestly, Trump's best argument on the economy is you can't leave the same people in charge. If you're feeling economic anxiety, you got to go back to what you know works. And honestly, he's more popular now than he's ever been. His administration is more popular than it's ever been. And look where he came from when he left office to right now. There's one reason why he's more popular today than he's ever been, because people are comparing it to what they've got now, and they're saying, I want to go back.
And yet it's a dead heat against somebody who's only been in the race 13 weeks.
Well, you act as though she just landed here on a spacecraft 13 weeks ago. She's been the vice president for an entire term.
But there's a
She was in the
between...
United States Senate. She did not show up here 13 weeks ago. She has a record as vice president, and I think what's hurting your campaign is that she also has a record when she ran for president. And she said a lot of things that have come back to haunt her.
But that's a different world. I mean, I can go back 10 years when Donald Trump said he wanted to tax oil companies out of existence. You can talk about Section 230. You can talk about Bitcoin. You can talk about abortion. There's a long list of things that Donald Trump has flip-flopped on.
But he was the president, and he has a record, and she was the vice president, and she has a record.
Yeah, but what kind of record? But you know that whole comparison isn't legit because the vice president doesn't do anything. What did Mike Pence do?
Well, I disagree. I actually think she has been the most consequential vice president when you consider the responsibilities that she was given, when you consider that Joe Biden has said she was there every step of the way. And finally,
you know it.
She cast more tie-breaking votes than any other vice president. She cast
that's because
the votes.
the Senate, because of the nature of the Senate, had nothing to do with her being special You know, that's just the job.
She cast the most consequential economic votes of any vice president in our history.
But what we have to talk about is what her plan is for now, right? Look at healthcare.
Great question.
Her plan for healthcare. She's talked about going after the pharmacy middleman, in particular the PBMs who set the prices for medications. She's talked about adding transparency. That alone, I know from my experiences, will cut the cost of medications and then eventually healthcare for every household by 20 to 30%.
I agree with you on PBMs, by the way. One. Two, I will say when she had her town hall this week, she got asked a simple question by a voter. What's the first bill you would pass? And had absolutely no answer for it. It wasn't an economic bill. It wasn't immigration. It wasn't health care. It was, I don't really know.
But let's go back to
what kind of confidence does that give you that she's ready to lead?
Yeah, because she puts together a team. She's a team leader as opposed to Donald Trump.
We don't vote for team. We vote for presidents.
Yes, we do vote for team.
We vote for presidents.
No, we vote for, if you're smart.
Who's on the ballot?
Who's on the ballot obviously leads the way, but who's on your team makes a big difference. On one hand, you have Donald Trump, where 40 out of 44 of his staff just turned against them. I've never seen that happen to anybody in any circumstances, ever. I've never seen a company like that, ever.
Not just turned against him, called him a fascist. I mean...
Yeah, I mean, his cabinet just went, you don't belong in government at all. What does that say? Whereas with Kamala Harris, you don't see that. In fact, you see her putting together a good team.
Well,
one time with her office, she had a bad experience.
I disagree. She's had a 92% turnover.
Yeah, one time
She's had a
years
rough
ago.
ride with staff.
Yeah, but you haven't seen that in the last 4 years.
You've seen it her entire career. It happened when she was Attorney General. It's happened when she's Vice President. I think she actually has a pretty rough track record of leadership when you consider the people who've washed through there.
So 90
now expand that out to the entire federal government.
Yeah, 90% of people in her cabinet you think will turn on her?
I'm saying that she has not had a good record of staff management in small groups. Now she's managing the whole federal government.
Small groups are harder. It has somebody who's managed. Small groups are harder because it's more personal.
But if the argument is turnover is bad, I mean, Donald Trump is the king of turnover, so that is a bad bar.
And on top of that, he's using loyalty
right?
as a mechanism to determine who he's going to hire. That's Tony Soprano.
Every president uses loyalty to their agenda to decide. No, I work for George W. Bush. You had to be loyal to the president's agenda. I'm sure Joe Biden did the same thing. They're politically elected. It's their prerogative to have loyal people.
It's their prerogative, but that doesn't make it the best people to solve the problems. She's already said...
You think she's going to hire people who disagree with her?
I think I've seen it. I've seen it. She hasn't disagreed with everything I've said to her by a long shot, but she listens. She's open-minded. She's not dogmatic. That's critical. Being dogmatic is the difference between being good as a president.
I think she has displayed this week and throughout October in her interviews an extreme amount of indecisiveness. And in Kentucky, they say the only thing in the middle of the road is yellow lines and dead squirrels. And I'm afraid she's going to find herself one or the other come election day.
Speaking of what staffing would look like, if she does win, would you take a job, and what job would you want?
No, I don't want a job. Costplusdrugs.com is changing healthcare. I can do more on the outside than the inside. I can still be an advisor.
How are you going to feed yourself if you don't take one of these jobs?
I'll find a way, Scott. I'll find a way.
Scott, if Donald Trump wins, would you take a job in his administration?
I have a terrific job here at CNN.
Just an incredible job once again by Mark Cuban calling out and fact-checking Scott Jennings. And there was one point that Jennings made that I don't think got enough pushback, and that was that Kamala Harris has been a bad vice president because of the tie-breaking votes that she has cast. And yes, she has been the most consequential VP in history. But those bills that were being passed, what are we talking about? The Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS and Science Act. We were investing in American infrastructure because of bills that Kamala Harris cast the tie-breaking vote on. We restored and recovered our economy because of it, working side by side with President Biden to make sure that the results of Donald Trump's mismanagement of the COVID-19 pandemic didn't plunge us into a recession. Yeah, I would say that she's pretty impactful. And I would say that Donald Trump's economic plan is an absolute disaster. And Mark Cuban talked more about that in this clip right here.
Look at the Trump campaign. Right now, he is selling tennis shoes, crypto, Bibles, watches, coins, Christmas ornaments, NFTs, pieces of his suit from when he was nearly assassinated.
Really? I didn't see
social
that
stocks.
one.
Yeah, shreds of his suit. His
Don't forget
book,
cologne.
His cologne. If he was on an episode of Shark Tank, would you invest in any of those?
No, because he's desperate. You only sell those things because you have to, because you need the money. And it's obvious, look, people think he's this great businessman. If the job of presidency was investing in real estate, picking curtains and fixtures, he'd probably be the most qualified. But it's not. He's not a business person. He's failed early and often. And the worst part about his business career is how many times he rips off hard-working Americans. Trump University, Trump Soho, Trump Foundation. When Michael Cohen was testifying in the New York trials, Michael Cohen took pride in the fact that he underpaid vendors. Just last week when he was in Detroit or in Michigan somewhere, and the audio went out, he started trashing the engineer and saying you shouldn't pay him and you might sue them.
Yeah, you were really bothered by that.
Yes. I mean, we've all been in that situation, right? And you should show some empathy because whoever's running that audio is freaking out right there and then. He showed no empathy at all. He doesn't care for hard-working Americans. Tariffs, the same thing. That's, we talk about it being a tax, but we need to get into the details of it. Think about what you're going to buy for next Christmas if he wins. You're looking at your Christmas present. 60% or more of the things you buy were made in China. Now, all of a sudden, they cost 60% more. When they cost 60% more, you have to make decisions. What am I not going to get my kids? What am I not going to get my family? What am I not going to get my friends? And on top of that, you had the retailers that you buy them from. They're not getting that business either. Their sales fall as well, particularly in the fourth quarter, which is everything. So now all of a sudden, you're not having the Christmas you want. The retailers are going out of business or struggling. And there's 50 other reasons why across-the-board tariffs don't work.
I really enjoyed the way that Mark Cuban has made the contrast so clear with Trump and really explained something that I don't think many Americans necessarily, or a majority, understand with tariff policy. And that is totally okay. And that's why Mark Cuban is out there and just really making the simple case that things are going to be more expensive for middle-class Americans. As Kamala Harris has said, it's going to be about a $4,400 a year tax on working families if Donald Trump implements his tariff plan. And that number could be potentially more if Donald Trump starts a worldwide trade war, which he already tried to do in his first administration and was an absolute disaster. We know this to be true. This is not some business genius. This is a guy who has gone bankrupt more times than we can count, and we don't want him to do it with our economy once again. And Cuban is continuing to deliver that message in such an incredible way. And we're going to keep talking about that message as well. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.